Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. This time we have another challenge cake where my online cake community voted for a theme and the winner was Pastel Goth. Here is a little mood board I put together as inspiration to get their creative juices flowing. Stick around to the end of the video to see their pieces. I swerved ever so slightly away from the board as I was making a cake for a wedding fair as well. And if you're wondering how to fix a cake that goes absolutely drastically wrong, then this is the tutorial for you because boy did it go wrong. So as this was for a wedding fair, all the cakes I'm working on here are dummies. This was a 4-inch, 6-inch and 8-inch cake. And if you want to know how to cover them, I have tutorials for all those initial techniques linked in the description box below. I started out airbrushing and I chose my darkest colour first, which was purple. I just went round the cake airbrushing patches randomly before moving on to my next colour, which was blue. As my airbrush colouring is water based, you don't want to run the colours into each other too much as it will change the colour where they meet. For example, if you wanted to airbrush blue and then yellow, where the lines overrun, they will turn green. And I've done the same thing randomly across all tiers and stacked them up. This was the pastel part of the Pastel Goth done. I then went ahead and covered the board. I've just recently reshot my toilet seat method, which I'll leave linked below. But the reason I've covered this after airbrushing is that airbrush colour can drop down with gravity, and I wanted patches around the bottom to match what was on the cake, not just random bits of overspray from the top. Now this is where I made a massive error. To get in the goth element, I thought black would look super striking against the pastel, which it did, but you know me, I am certainly not a piper. Here I'm piping with black buttercream and just going in freehand creating random spiderweb shapes all around the middle tier. As you can see, it's a tad bit shaky and lumpy, and then I decided to mirror the cobwebs on the bottom right of the cake and the top left of the cake where the spiders were going to be sitting. Keep watching to see what happens to this afterwards. I then pulled all of my disco balls out of my cake cupboard, as I seem to have accumulated quite a few, and I chose to put together this larger one and smaller one for a spider head and body. I'm just removing the fixings with some pliers, which should pull straight out of the inner, as it's just polystyrene. I'm then placing these onto the cake with a cocktail stick, and this will be far easier on real cake. I'm trying to shove polystyrene into polystyrene here, which is a bit more difficult. Once the head and body are securely in place, we're adding legs. These are just paper covered wires bent and cut down to size. You then want to find tiny little gaps in between the mirror squares to push it into the body. And then I'm just resting the wire legs onto the cake. You want to go around until you've got all the legs in position, and then I'm painting the paper coating with some silver paint. You could of course just use silver wires, which would have been easier and made more sense. It was at this point I left the studio for dinner, came back, took one look at the cake and thought, I cannot believe I'm taking this to a wedding fair as a representation of the work I can do when all of that cobweb work was bumpy and wobbly. So I decided to take a scraper to it and just remove the whole thing. As you can see, it's nice and easy to remove, but it does leave the black lines on the finish. This was a bold move, but I knew it needed to be done. Now we needed to get rid of that cobweb effect, so I'm taking my water spray bottle and saturating the whole thing. As you can see, the colour can start to deepen when coming into contact with water. I'm then taking some kitchen towel and starting to blot and wipe off the coating, and you'll see it slowly starts turning white again, which is how it started out. Just keep wetting your sugar paste and wiping it off. Now that the majority is off, I can't airbrush this again, so I'm deciding to paint it. I've just got some gel colour mixed with water and a little bit of white powder to create an opaque paint. I'm first going in with my yellow and adding this randomly just like I did with the airbrushing. I'm then switching to blue then the pink, and using a dry brush, I'm actually patting the colours where they meet to help them blend together. Complete opposite of what I told you to do with the airbrushing. I'm now adding my second spider and its legs down onto the bottom tier. Then I still wasn't happy and I went back in with some purple paint, blending this in as I went. Now, instead of black buttercream webs, because we've already made that mistake once, I decided to pull some chains out that I have in my cake decorating cupboard. I thought the silver matches the disco ball spiders, and using the chains as webs was kind of a bit of a rock and roll idea. I'm just putting a hole in the top of the cake, and I'm filling the hole with some fresh, soft white sugar paste. So I can then push the chain into that sugar paste, which will hold it into position once it's dried. I can't just push it straight into the hole because the sugar paste on the cake is already set. You want something nice and soft for it to stick to. I'm then just putting a hole where I want the chain to end and layering up the chains, overlapping them to create a spider web draping effect. And then doing a little bit of jewellery making here where I'm actually attaching one chain to another. I'm just using my wire cutters to open up one of the links, attaching the link to the existing chain and squeezing it back shut. I'm doing that with some smaller chains in between the larger ones for that spider web effect. This is how it looks once it's done. I feel like it just needed something else, so I popped a few white pearls here and there, and then not realising that they actually look like white spider eggs, just to make the cake even creepier than it needed to be. But here is the finished cake. I feel better about taking this one to a wedding fair than I did the blotchy web piping. I should just learn my lesson and realise piping is just not my forte. But I hope you enjoyed this one. Please stick around now to view the Brigadier's challenge pieces based off this mood board. And remember, the mood board is there to only offer inspiration. They can, however, just deviate from this as long as it fits the theme of Pastel Goth. Please vote for your favourites in the comments below. We have slightly changed up the voting system where I will add up everybody's votes from the comments, but my family is also going to add in their favourites to the votes to make sure it's more fair and not too much of a popularity contest, because each winner wins £30 that they can either treat their family to a cinema trip or buy themselves some new moulds and cake tools. And if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, please do consider joining us over in the Cherry Brigade, where we do these challenges 4 times a year, but we also have exclusive videos, lots of cake chat and advice in our Facebook group. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.